ain't searching, I remember. I was born with the answer. Through the fire, through the pressure, I emerge with the standard. I don't follow, I awaken. Ain't no man got it. I'm the root, I'm the branches. I'm the law and the language. Yeah.
Happy Wednesday, everyone, and welcome back to another round of My Patriot Report Live. I am the bridge connecting the next generation to federal contracting. I am Rituan Hill. And with me, I have the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Ambassador of Peace. And if you don't know who he is by now, you might want to ask Anthropic, Mr. Walter Cotton III. Mr. Cotton, how you doing this lovely Wednesday?
I'm doing well. I had an impromptu date night last night. Got a chance to go down to Broadway and watch Death of a Salesman, a classic Broadway rendition of that novel. So I'm feeling good today.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What's that West Side Story? That's a popular one. Have you ever seen that one?
You know, I have not seen West Side Story, and my wife and I have committed ourselves to going and seeing all of the classics as we, also weave in some of the ethnic nuances, like we saw what was that? Cedric the Entertainer is in it. Not Coltrane. At any rate, I'm a child of the 70s, charge it to the game.
Yes,
but we've committed ourselves to going and seeing both the ethnic plays as well as the classics. I understand that Whoopi Goldberg has a play coming out shortly called The Whoopi Monologues. And so, yes, we're going to watch the thespians in their native environment.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Now, I wanted to, dovetail into, this Capital Matters movement, because as we were talking about it, and then, I thought about it, and this is new for the audience. This is new territory for me too, so when Mr. Cotton, when you said, you take up staffer positions, the first question that popped up in my mind is, okay, what is a staffer? Is this somebody who works directly for the senator? What is it like interfacing in that system? But I think before even that standpoint, for the people who may not even or don't understand where we're coming from, this Capital Matters movement, could you just give us a high level overview of what that is for the audience that don't know?
Sure. So again, a advocate and friend, Justin Brown, for the past 15 years has been driving a nonprofit effort in DC called Hill Vets. And under the Hill Vets model, Justin has been placing veterans as staffers in the offices of our congressmen and our senators. And that placement over the years gave us a relationship that allowed us to tip the balance of power, if you will, on legislation that was important to the veterans community. I had the bright idea that that influence, that capability is important today, and it needs to trickle down to the local level. And so we have created a program that we are calling Capital Matters, that will allow our veterans to become staff members, interns, influencers within the offices of their governors, within the offices of their mayors, within the offices of their state senators, their state representatives, and their local members. And we believe that that important placement will allow us to deliver the veteran voice to matters that are of importance to the communities that veterans live in. So the Capital Matters movement is simply designed to duplicate what my friend Justin Brown has created under the Hill Vets brand on a national and local level.
Okay, yes, sir. Now, in our last segment, you spoke about how that you were invited in. You were in the room where they were making decisions. I don't recall the actual. Was it the Job and Credits Act of 2010 where you ultimately?
That was one of the many rooms that I got invited
Okay.
into when I was steeped in my advocacy season as chairman of the small business committee over at the American Legion, and that was a practice that I was familiar with that they appear to have abandoned during this legislative season, and that is that the members of Congress invited the interested parties in to help them shape legislation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and somewhere along the line, that changed to this silo approach to legislation creation. And I'm trying to see if we can, one, confirm or disavow that that change has happened, and then two, change it back to the way it was, right? Where we were able to contribute to the development of legislation so that we didn't get, omnibus bills out of the Senate or the House that didn't directly align with the interests of the people. Case in point, the Take Care of Our Veterans Act, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a $21 billion bill that is purported to cover the interest of the veteran community. We in the veteran advocacy community believe that that bill is damaging to the veteran community. We believe that it is polarizing. We believe that there are provisions in that bill that need to be considered, and therefore we cannot support the bill in its current form. And a advocacy group like the Capital Matters group would be able to cause our congressmen and our senators to recognize as that bill is moving through the process, this dog won't hunt. And so right now we're in a situation where we've got a bill sitting on the floor of the House of Representatives that is ready for approval that does not represent the will, the interest of the constituents. How is that possible? Just let me say that again. You have a $21 billion bill that has a Take Care of Our Veterans nomenclature on it that's sitting on the floor of the House of Representatives that the veteran community does not endorse in a full and deep-throated voice. How is that possible? The only way that's possible is for the Congress to be tone deaf to the interest of the veteran community. The only way that's possible is for a bill like that to have been cobbled together in the silos that didn't include veterans in the process. And so we see that kind of invisible hand of big business, right? That invisible hand of Mr. Global having creeped into our lawmaking process. And we need a function like Capital Matters so that we can get our hands back on the pulse of what really is going on, right? We can get our hands back on the pulse of what really matters in this nation, because right now, what we're seeing is very concerning.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, okay, my question was going. So, for the staffers and those intern positions, are those individuals in the process are normally inserted in the room, or do they just have an opportunity to be close by proximity and give their input? Like, what is what is the advantage, or should I say, what is the advantage for those individuals in that's taking up these positions? Is it that they get to be in the room, proximity, or they just get to be close enough to where they could say maybe we should add this for veterans?
And that's another one of the functions that I suggested we need to implement and correct, and that is us understanding how our civic process actually works. right? You know, most of us don't know how the members within the office of the congressman or the members within the office of the senators, how they actually contribute to the legislation, to the policy, to the communication that comes out of those offices. And if we understood that, we would know that those staffers in an organization, just like in a political office, right? You have power and you have authority, right? The member, the elected official in the office has the authority because he or she is the figurehead. But staff has the power, right? Staff has the power because they organize the meetings. They take all of the incoming communication and triage what's important for the member, and they put it in front of the member for the member to react to, right? So understanding that balance of power and managing it to our best interest, to our highest and best use, we used to understand, right? Somewhere along the way, right, we fell asleep and we thought that we can influence things just by employing the democratic process, right? That's the democratic process of selecting the members. Well, what has happened, we can see very clearly, right, with the voters' implementation of these corporate participants in our voting process, right? The invisible hand of big business has gotten into our election process and turned it into a popularity contest. And so, you know, what yesterday effectively supported the values, the spirit and wisdom of the Constitution no longer supports it because we have a interruption that has been put into the system. I am encouraging everyone that's within the sound of my voice, and particularly those people that are within your age group, to recognize this dangerous change that has happened in our political process and get involved. Reclaim your authority. Take control of your process. You deserve the liberty that I enjoyed as a citizen of these United States. Your children deserve the same liberty that I enjoyed. And right now, there's a thief among us that is ripping the future value out of this nation. And unless your generation wakes up and takes control of the levers, it's going to be a Hunger Game kind of experience here in my nation. And I don't want to see that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, before we go into my generation, because I do have some questions on maybe some, not maybe, but some action steps that we should be taking immediately. Now, my question in regards to the Take Care Americans Veterans Act, right? To my understanding, they're taking money away from certain programs or eliminating the sleep apnea and tinnitus on the ringing in your ear for people to understand. They're taking that disability away, and essentially that money is going to offset to other priorities that were included in the bill. Is that correct? Or where's the money coming from?
Yeah, well, that's the logic that's being employed because, you know, there was a bill that was passed that said, you know, you had to have appropriate offsets. And so if they are, you know, adding these additional benefits like the major star or Richard Star provision that, you know, ensures veterans can get both their disability pay and their combat pay, they've got to find a way to pay for it. And so what they are doing is they're saying, you know, let's target these modalities that, you know, that we can agree that most people will accept us eliminating. And if we eliminate them, we can take the future cost of having to manage those and use that as justification to pay for these things that we're taking away. And I, for one, as a representative of these men and women, say that that's ridiculous, right? You know, in a situation where, you know, we are spending hundreds of millions of dollars
Mm-hmm.
to a wage, a war of choice that is producing nothing but economic pain and dis-ease in these United States. If we can find the hundreds of millions of dollars to participate in those kind of shenanigans, we can find the money necessary to fulfill our commitment, the commitment that we made to him and her who put on that uniform and bore the battle, right? We promised him and her that we would take care of them, not that we would strip down their benefits, that we would take care of him and her. This is a litmus test for us as a nation, right? This is a litmus test for us to look at in the face of our men and women in harm's way,
Mm-hmm.
right? Do we as a nation have the testicular fortitude? Do we have the unmitigated gall to do the right thing, right? You know, are we an agreement capable nation, right? Can we keep our agreement with ourselves, much less our friends and allies across the globe?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so does the bills do when bills that have budgets attached to it? Does it normally work like that? They have to essentially find the money, and they have to they pretty much have to balance a budget in order to give money to one program. Is that how it normally works? And I asked this question because you mentioned with the geopolitical events that's going on with Iran. It seems like they just came up with the money, or is that money ultimately coming from the taxpayers, or how does that process work?
Well, you know, as I understand it, and I would ask that you confirm this with your best, uh, congressional research tool or AI at a minimum. But it's my understanding that law was passed recently that requires the agencies to offset any new program by eliminating waste, but with existing budgetary confines, right? And that was a provision or effort that was put in place to try to get us as a nation to start moving towards balanced budgets, right? Because we're not going to get anywhere until we start curbing our appetite for spending, right? We need to spend within our means, and so a ruler policy was put in place. I would believe that was under, well, it doesn't matter what administration, that required agencies to offset any new programs, right, with efficiencies or the eliminations of fraud, waste, and abuse. So that is a requirement today if we're going to bring new systems online to find ways to pay for them before we bring them online.
Mm-hmm. And so ultimately, that's not to just stay on this for too long, but ultimately, before that, it was pretty much I won't say reckless spending, but they were just able to spend. Now this is kind of like a control mechanism to lower the U.S. debt deficit, essentially, pretty much. Is that?
Yeah, you know, I mean, we enjoy the exorbitant privilege of being the world's reserve currency.
Mm-hmm.
And because we enjoyed that privilege for so many years, you know, our spending habits got out of control, right? Because we have the ability to print money into existence. And so instead of being fiscally responsible with that privilege, you know, we employed a little uberish, right? You know, we decided to go to the moon, right? You know, a good utilization of resources and funds. And now there's talk about, you know, going to Mars. And so when you have the ability to print the money that goes into your bank account that pays for the debts that you achieve, there's something strange that happens in the psyche, and America is suffering from that. And so we woke up one day and realized that we had a ballooning deficit that just wasn't a good look in the position that we were in. And so they started putting some systems and mechanisms in place to start curbing that enthusiasm, because right now I think that our current debt is approaching $23 trillion or greater, and just the interest payment on that debt is more than we spend to cover the Department of Defense for this nation. So something in that equation, right, when your interest expense, outpaces your GDP, outpaces your earnings, you can't sustain that without approaching bankruptcy as a household. And I can't imagine what would happen to the nation that manages the world's reserve currency if it were to face fiscal crises or a fiscal crisis that suggested bankruptcy.
Absolutely. That's actually a good pivot and segue into one other thing, the next topic that I wanted to discuss, and that's the model that we've been pushing. I've been impressed by Dr. Claude Anderson's Powernomics framework, and we've adopted the terminology from Roxanne of regentrification. Now, in this regentrification model, we talk about things like opportunity zone, hub zone, domicile federal contracts into those areas. But to my understanding, this still is not something that is commonly known, and maybe because most people that are on the lower K, or most people who are not into savvy investors or investors, they don't understand the significance of this opportunity zone and the taxes that comes with any investment you make and the profits you make, and you cashing out on those profits. Could you just give us a little bit of understanding of how this opportunity zone matters for the individuals who are, for the savvy investors? Let's go with the savvy investors first. I want to talk about it from both perspectives.
You know what? I don't want to talk about the savvy investor for the moment, right? Okay. I want to talk about the individual that's in your generation, that's in your age range, that's caught up, right? That is facing an inflationary pressure that suggests that you can work harder, but you're still not going to be able to afford more, right? Because the dollar has been diluted so much so that it's just a paperweight now. I'm trying to understand why your generation isn't waking up and taking control of the narrative and moving away from this BS idea of becoming an employee or a new generation slave. And why aren't they thinking about ownership, right? Why aren't they thinking about controlling the narrative, right? The people that are coming from my generation, we didn't do it right. I mean, I can admit that, right? I can admit that to your generation, right? We're leaving you in a less healed position than we enjoyed. And so the people that are in my generation have got to fess up, and we got to say, hey, guess what? Right? We were asleep at the wheel. We shouldn't have took that turn towards Vietnam, right? We shouldn't have taken that turn towards the North American Free Trade Agreement and offshore all of our manufacturing, right? We have to admit that we made an error, right? But these are correctable errors, right? An error does not become a mistake unless you don't correct it. And so we need to have a conversation with your generation and say, hey, listen, we made these errors, and we need to tell you what we were thinking when we made those turns and curves, so that as you take the wheel of this new economy, this new society that's being driven by engines like AI and the like, right? You're able to better navigate the turns that are in front of you. And so my question back to you, my young protege, is what is your generation thinking? Right? Why is your generation not taking advantage of today's gold rush? Right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've been talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
The largest single customer in North America, the federal government, has just empowered veterans,
Mm-hmm.
disabled veterans, with the ability to be the rising tide that reshapes the economic economy. So why is your generation, which I know served in Desert Storm, I know they served in many of the conflicts that enabled them to participate, why are they not beating a path to the door? Why are they not, not out in the streets, but in the network? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Why are they not beating their path to these veteran service organizations? You know why they aren't? Because those veteran service organizations are not supporting their interests. The American Legion, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, right? Disabled Veterans of America are not speaking to the interests of today's young veterans.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you know, when you say that, Mr. Khan, I think of a lot of things, you know, some that's systemic, so forth. And I can't speak for everybody, but I could just look at outside of my perspective and I could see things like the advent of shorts being created, which creates that, you know, that short attention span, you know, distractions, you know, all the influencers out there, hair, crypto, meme coins, stock trading, you know, and I think it leaves so much noise out there that I don't think is actually a clear direction for our generation. And it seems like it may be a lot of trial and error. But like you said, I think us bringing that attention to people, and I could say, like, for instance, I can't speak for everybody, but I could tell you guys what I've been doing, you know, and Mr. Cotton here, he's been mentoring me for, you know, over 2.5 years. And I could say with 100% confidence that everything that he said that was going to happen has happened way beforehand. So we were able to put ourselves in a position to where we're insulated from this stuff because we saw where everything was going. So us taking this opportunity zone model and taking this hub zone and being able to understand that service disabled veteran-owned small businesses have a golden ticket in the season because
can I stop you for a
Yeah.
minute, Mr. Hill? Because, you know, for a lot of the people that you're speaking to, you know, this is the first time they've heard this language. Even though they've listened to you and I talk before, this is the first time you've had their attention. This is the first time they've heard it, right? And so this is a new language for them, right? It's like a new dialect. Parlez-vous français? Right? Como se dice italiano, right? And so we have to, I think, break this language down into bite-sized morsels that they can understand. And in many instances, you know, the best way for people to understand things is for them to see an example of it. Okay.
Yeah.
And so, you know, you've had your kimono closed and you've been working on a few things. You know, would it be appropriate for, you know, us to talk about how you cleared that channel of communication and got the white noise out? Like, you know, what kind of things did you do that led you to the place that you settled at?
That's a real good question. Because like I said, going down all those noise pathways, I went down those house flipping, house rehab, and I went down the stock trading options. I went down the credit repair consultant, and then, you know, ultimately I was like, man, the government has billions of dollars, and they're saying because I'm a service disabled veteran-owned small business, 5% of that has to go to me. I was like, well, 5% of that couple hundred billion makes, you know, that's still a lot of money. So ultimately I looked at it as like, well, that's the best pathway for me to make a lot of money in a shorter period of time versus going down these other pathways. And ultimately I could revisit those pathways once I secure the bag. And what's the quickest and biggest bag I saw was federal contracting. I mean,
So
it just
wait a
made
minute. Let me
sense.
make sure I understand what you said. What I think I heard you say was that you were looking at all of these today pathways to income, whether it was the TikTok influencer or the earn your leisure through stock trading, or any of these other ways that they're become an electronic store owner, right?
Mhm.
Where you just
Yeah.
drop ship, right? All of those things were coming your way, and
Mhm.
you attempted a couple of them. I think I heard you say,
Yep.
and then you recognized that you had a preference. You had a golden ticket. Explain that part of the remedy.
Yeah. Yeah. Essentially, like I said, the federal government has money, billions of dollars set, and 23% of that has to go to small business. 5% of that goes to service disabled veteran-owned small businesses. I was like, even if I could get 1% of that couple hundred billion, that's still a lot of money,
But
So
can I
that,
time out? Because the place that you're jumping over is that, somewhere along the line, you looked around and recognized that you had that capability,
yeah,
right? That you owned the preference that gave you the access to that environment.
yeah, yes, sir, 100%, yeah, yeah.
And what was that? I mean, what was that experience that made you realize, wait a second, I'm a disabled veteran. And so all of that stuff that they're talking about in terms of government contracting, that applies to me. Like, what was that moment
Mhm.
for you? Like, when did you make that connection?
It actually started with that Earn Your Leisure podcast. Shakia Keegler, she was talking. She was the one talking. She's the veteran as well. I believe she was like a Navy veteran. She was talking about government contracting and the fact that they had this set aside. And I was like, okay, I'm a service disabled veteran. I went to HVAC school. I went to heavy equipment school. Somewhere in the connection between my status and those trades, that I could create a business, a profitable business, and offer services to the federal government. So that ultimately how I made the connection.
So somewhere along the line, you realized that your service disabled veteran status,
Mhm.
right, gave you access to this multiple industry opportunity, which is
Mhm.
doing business with the federal government,
Mhm.
who at that point had a 5% goal
Mhm. I
that
think
they
it
were
might have
not
been
meeting.
3% at the go. I think it was 3% at the time when I watched that interview, and then they increased it to 5%. Actually,
Okay, so you realized that you had a golden ticket that gave
Mhm.
you access to a relatively virgin market, and you just needed to acquire some know-how on that. Correct?
Correct. And that's how I ended up running into you. Yeah, yes, sir.
Talk about the things that happened between there, because I'm sure that there were some processes that you went through, like the um, federal government has some free training solutions.
Yeah.
There's a pretty broad cottage industry out there of strategies like middleman. I mean, like, how did you find your way through that maze, which is the freeware,
Mhm.
to our relationship?
Yes, sir. So ultimately, it was me just being curious and trial and error, right? So I went through Apex Accelerator, or PTAC. I went through the veteran small business center with the VBox. I went through every single free federal government asset that they have. I went through them, and then all the information was pretty generic. Even with PTAC, they were telling me, well, you have to choose rather you want to go through if you want to be a prime contractor, or you only want to do subcontracting, or you only want to do micro purchases. He said you have to choose one, and then that's the one you have to run to ground. That was the advice that I got. And then, ultimately I went from there to, okay, I have to invest in myself. So I went to find, influencers that I saw at the time. I invested money into their course, and then that's where I heard about middleman stuff, and You just got to call them and get a quote, and then ultimately I ran into this individual who was telling me about this Mr. Randolph, who we know, and he created this micro market. And I thought at the time the best way to get my foot in the door was to go through this micro market, and then ultimately that led me to the VA Ostibu. They have these webinars, and because this gentleman introduced me to Mr. Randolph, I saw Mr. Randolph was one of the speakers, Mr. Cotton was one of the speakers, and Mr. Elmore was one of the speakers as well. And because I saw these three individuals on this VA podcast, on the VA Ostibu YouTube channel presenting, I attended, and then I heard Mr. Cotton talk about joint venturing, and at that time I was like, okay, I understand that you could team, prime, subcontract, and joint venture was another lane, but I wasn't familiar with joint venturing, how it worked. And when he spoke on it and I was looking into it, it kind of connected the dots right there. I was like, okay, joint venturing. He's talking about joint venturing. I gotta understand what this is. And then, from there, we are here. We are here.
Well, I think that the "we are here" point and the miraculous nature of that, you need to explain to the audience as well, because right now, unbeknownst to the audience, you have a relationship with the top MPA in the Ability One community. You have a multinational technology corporation, and if we said their name, people would fall out of their chair, that's looking for you to be the tip of the spear as they drive a disabled veteran solution into the marketplace. And you own rack and pinion steering on a tribal asset that is equally $1 billion in size. And so it's important for you to unpack for the audience what your journey has been to get to here, because many of them are leaning up against that lack of resources lane, that lack of resources challenge that you were leaning up against. And miraculously, right, the harder you worked, right, the more this universe came to support the efforts that you were looking to pursue. And I think it's important for you to unpack your story for the audience, because there's somebody that's out there that's listening to this that's saying, I'm not Ratwan. I hear you, Mr. Hill, right? But I'm not you, right? They need to know that there was a point where you were leaning up against a gate that had a price tag that was beyond that you were aware of, beyond that you could afford, and you walked through that gate anyway. They need to understand the nuances of what it took you to become who you are today, and we should unpack that for them on the next podcast.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. And I will leave you guys with this one, Jim. It does start with believing in yourself. That's got to be the foundation. Believing, having the audacity to know that you could do it, no matter what it is, even if it's something you never even interface or encounter. Just believing in yourself that you can do it. But
I will leave you with this: that Mr. Hill and I's relationship started with him receiving a contract from me that had $150,000 price tag on it, and you need to come back so that you hear the rest of the story.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And guys, on that note, we'll catch you back same place, same time on Friday. I am Ratwan Hill, and that is the Mr. Walter Cotton III. Until next time.